Imagine if you were a 70-year-old and suddenly you got a message out of the blue from a researcher half a world away, and that researcher taught you your grandfather's real name. How would that feel? Hi, I'm Tom Mullaney, and this is First Gen Professor. This video is a really short one, and it's just a reflection on the power of research, especially for those of us who have the privilege, the honor of interviewing the actual historical figures in our work, or their next of kin, or someone who may have known them. I was working on my second book, The Chinese Typewriter, A History, and one of the things I was doing was trolling the Chinese internet for bloggers. What many people don't know about China is that there are many septuagenarian and octogenarian bloggers, so bloggers in their 70s and 80s, and they post reminiscence, they post landscape photography and pictures of flowers and things. But I came across one blog in particular that kept referring to one of the first inventors of a mass-manufactured Chinese typewriter, this man named Shu Zhendong, but referred to him as Grandpa. I couldn't resist. I left a comment on this gentleman's blog. I introduced myself, told him who I was, said I was coming to China for a research trip. Would it be possible to meet him in person? So we met at a Starbucks in Shanghai, and we were having a really nice conversation. He was telling me a bit about his grandfather, what he knew, also the kinds of materials that he had collected. In the middle of that conversation, I interjected what I thought was just a kind of footnote question. I said, recently I did some work at the archives and also at the Shanghai Municipal Library, which has an amazing historical collection of old periodicals. And I said, I came across a few articles, definitely by your grandfather, but it was under a different name. Instead of Shu Zhendong, it was Shu Changyu. Do you know anything about that? So he went completely silent. And for a moment, I thought I had messed something up. I just noticed his energy completely shift, and I grew a little bit worried. After a good 3, 4, 5-second pause, which felt like forever, he started to speak again. But for some reason, he started to tell me a story about when he was a little toddler crawling around on the floor of his parents' apartment. And in particular, crawling under the table in either the kitchen or like the living room. And I remember doing this as a kid as well. There was one table in his parents' home that he used to crawl under quite a lot. And he always remembered that on the underside of the table were Chinese characters. There were things written on the bottom of it. And in particular, there were these two characters that he just never knew the meaning of. Fast forward probably 60, 65 years, and here he is sitting with this random guy that commented on his blog on the internet from the United States, visiting from a half a world away. And in that one moment, what I had inadvertently done was told him not only what those two characters on the bottom side of the dining room table were, but what his grandfather's birth name was. That is the name that his grandfather was given at birth. It is very common, especially for Chinese writers or artists, but also just everyday individuals, in this case an engineer living in the 20s and 30s, very common for people to take on almost like pseudonyms or nom de plume, that kind of thing. And in this case, this man, Shu Changyu, took on the name Zhendong and became Shu Zhendong, and then his entire professional life he went by that name. And in fact, the first mass-manufactured Chinese typewriter in history was named after him, so it was the Shu Zhendong Chinese typewriter. Well, his grandchildren only knew him by that name, and then of course he passed on. Well, it turns out that those two articles that I found were one of the only, perhaps the only published pieces by this man that he used with his given name. What does this leave us with? Why am I telling you this? I guess I just want to share kind of, maybe you've seen it for yourself, the kind of powerful emotional impact that research can have well before you publish anything. Like well before a book comes out or an article or a documentary, just the process itself. As exceptional as this one meeting was, it's actually one of probably close to 20 stories that I have like this, where something that I came across in an archive in some obscure collection, I had the chance to put back in the hands of the individual themselves or a member of their family, and to see what impact it has. And so I have to remind myself, and I want to remind anyone watching, of just the awesome power, the emotional power of research, just as something to reflect on. For my own part, my father passed away not long ago, and sometimes I think, what would it be like if I, inshallah, were 70 years old and I received an email from someone in China, some 20-something-year-old or some 30-something-year-old in China, saying, "Hi, pardon this out of the blue email, but I'm, researching a project on the company your father worked for, or whatever it is. And oh, by the way, I have come across his correspondence from the 70s or 1980s or 1990s. Would you like to get together?" What would that feel like? So just never lose sight of how amazing this job is, how lucky we are to do it, and also the profound power that research has well before anything reaches the printed page. I'll see you in the next video.